Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the program this morning. You are watching this on our Facebook page as well as on our YouTube channel at present, while it's going out on the airwaves of Salam Media and Al Ansar in Durban and Peter Maritzburg. Now, looking at international news this morning, an article penned by a researcher at the Al Jazeera Center for Studies, Temisa Ibrahim Fakude. The conflict over the island of Socotra presents yet another worrying angle to the Yemeni conflict. Let's find out from him exactly what's going on there. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tembisa, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much for making time. Now, this is a little known place in South Africa. People don't really know the importance of the island of Socotra. Why is it so strategic right now?
Well, it's strategic because of its geographic positioning. So Kotra lies just off the Red Sea, the Mediterranean, and the Indian Ocean. So, in other words, just outside the Horn of Africa, off the coast of Somalia. So that's where most of the traffic trade meet. So that's why it's important. It's a bit far away from the homeland, which is Yemen, but it belongs to Yemen. So it's very strategic because that's going to be a very busy route, particularly now given that China's Belt Road Initiative, which is the plan of expanding Chinese trade throughout the world, is going to be using those waters and transporting their goods. So it has become important because of that. But over and above that, it's one of the jewels of the Middle East and the world, actually, because it's got an amazing biodiversity, fauna and flora. Some of the plants and animals, including small little insects that are not found anywhere else in the world except in that part of the world.
Mhm. Now we've also, you've written about the Dubai ports world, and they're looking at the various ports and trade routes along that region. How significant is this? I mean, is Dubai really going out to capture the sea trade in that part of the world?
Yes, Dubai has shown interest in that part of the world. I mean, they have established ports around the world, particularly on the Red Sea. They have also started something in Somaliland, they've started something in Eritrea. So, over and above the use of ports to attack Yemen that they've been using with Saudi Arabia over the years, they've also gone commercial. So, that's their new way of basically trying to dominate the waters. And so Qatar lies extremely strategic for refueling and also for the creation of ports. But now the worry is that they might just impact on the environment in that part of the world, which is an extremely sensitive and important, not only to the people of Yemen, but to all the people of the world, because it is one of the UNESCO's heritage sites.
Geographically, Dubai is not a very big place. It's a tiny little country compared to the rest of some of the major powers. But they seem to be really throwing around a lot of military weight right now, buying of arms and actively involved in conflicts in Yemen, in places like Libya. What is their actual aim, and how deeply are they involved in funding the military establishment?
I think they're trying to imitate what the Great Britain used to be, because, as you said, Dubai is a dot in the ocean compared to how it's actually expressing itself militarily and otherwise. So what they're doing is, I mean, Dubai has, for example, at the moment, one of the largest military shows in the world, where they invite all the arms manufacturers to come and exhibit their products in Dubai, in not in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi. So they are really flexing up their muscles. They have sponsored the war in Yemen, which has lasted until they pulled out almost 18 months ago. But they're still now sponsoring the rebels in the southern part of Yemen, because they would like to see Yemen splitting into two, southern part controlled, of course, by the rebels and Dubai. So they are flexing their muscles, and I think we are going to see a domination of the Emiratis in the Red Sea, and most likely in the Horn of Africa. That's where they'll be dominating. So they're quite big in terms of their spending on military, but they're also quite big in terms, they're becoming bigger in terms of their spending on rebels and secessionists in that part of the world, including, of course, supporting Khalifa al-Haftar in Libya.
There is an analysis that says that if the southern ports of Yemen are allowed to develop and are allowed to welcome international ships and trade, that Dubai itself would begin to suffer economically. Ships would no longer need to dock there, and it would be the collapse economically of that part of the world. Do you, favor that kind of an interpretation? Do you think that Dubai is intrinsically involved in Yemen to actually keep their ports unoperational so that they can flourish on the other end?
No, I think to the contrary. Actually, they want to keep the ports working because if they don't, you still have a lot of ambitious and countries with deep pockets in that part of the world. One of them being Turkey, Qatar, and including Saudi Arabia. They might just take the opportunity because Socotra is not a very rich country. It's extremely impoverished island of Yemen. So they need investment. So what I think not Dubai necessarily, but the Emiratis, based in Abu Dhabi, led by Mr. Mohammed bin Zayed, are trying to do. They're trying to take that advantage of establishing their own port because that's their strong foreign policy power. It's controlling ports, at least for now. They've got a number of ports around the world. So Crota has been identified as one of those positions, not necessarily to deprive the Yemenis of having their own and only an oil port, which I don't see it happening anytime soon if it's left to the Yemenis to establish it. But the Emiratis are most likely to do a good job in terms of running a successful port in Socotra. The only challenge, of course, for environmentalists is that could create havoc in terms of the environment in that part of Yemen. So that's the only challenge that people. I mean, most of the Yemenis actually are welcoming the idea that they would like to see Socotra developed. They like to see business coming in, but at what cost? Because it's going to fast track the further division and cessation of the southern part of Yemen to the northern part of Yemen, which is what initially the Saudi-led coalition was trying to avoid.
And looking at this division of North and South, if the rebels backed by the UAE seem to take control along with the Saudis in the South, then who would assume the role of leadership in the North? Would it be the Houthis backed by Iran?
Well, that's the thing, you see, because if that happens, it means that President Hadi, who's currently sitting in Saudi Arabia waiting to return to Sana'a, will have nowhere to go to now because the Sana'a and the larger part of northern Yemen is controlled by the Houthis, and then you have the southern part of Yemen also now controlled by the Emirati-backed rebels. So you're going to have a challenge in terms of finding a space now for a so-called legitimately recognized government of Abdurrab Mansour Hadi to find a place where he can go back to lead. So it's gonna be very dangerous. We're gonna have two, as it was before, of course, two different Yemen, one in the north and one in the south, and they'll all have their own different and separate political ambitions. But that will also mean a permanent, lasting conflict, because if you're going to have the Houthis leading in the north, who are supported supposedly by Iran, and you're going to have the southern part of Yemen sponsored and supported by the Emiratis, again, you have these two arch enemies controlling what used to be Yemen.
Would there be no interest, for example, in Saudi Arabia or the UAE wanting a single unified Yemen where they control the entire area? Would that have been something that they gave up on as an ambition now that the Houthis have gained strength? Or is it still perhaps somewhere lingering in the back of their minds that one day they'd like to control the entire area? And I would suspect that there are other mineral wealths in the northern region, perhaps some oil as well.
Well, the horse has bolted. It's not going to happen now. The Houthis have entrenched themselves. The hatred and the destruction that has been caused by the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen I find it extremely difficult that the Houthis will ever give up that power and the gains that they've made so far. So the only hope that Saudis might play in Yemen is in the southern part of Yemen, including Sokotra, if the ambitions of the Emiratis are realized. But I don't see, of course, many people and those peace-loving human beings around the world would like to see the whole of Yemen going back to normal, being stable, etc. But it's not going to happen now. Horses bolted. It's too polarized politically, and the war has devastated the country. And many people have dug in their heels, including various tribes and formations in Yemen. So Houthis have entrenched themselves with the support of Iran, and many other factions in Yemen have also entrenched themselves. And I think right now what they're doing is they're picking and choosing new alliances. And I wouldn't be surprised if you find another faction calling for another cessation or another declaring another part of Yemen independent from the Yemen proper.
Demis, a final question. So, would it be fair to say that this is sectarian driven, or is this just economics and politics, the need for structure for geopolitical locations and resources and money, greed that is ultimately driving it all, or is there real sectarian hatred?
It's all of those things that you just mentioned. It's greed, it's sectarianism, it's politics, it's the influence of outside actors who have identified certain interest in Yemen. But most importantly, it's what I would like to call a geographical curse, because the way in which Yemen is geographically positioned, it it will perpetuate until the day of Qiyamah invites problems, including countries like Somalia, Eritrea, Djibouti. There will never be peace there because of their geographical position. If you look at it, it's the shortest point to from the Gulf, from the Red Sea, from the Indian Ocean, Bab el Mandeb, all of those key areas in the world where the traffic from east to west go through. That's where Yemen is, and that's where Sokotra is. That's how we used to be as South Africa, if you remember, before the Cape of Good Hope was the meeting point of everyone until the Suez Canal rendered us irrelevant. So people started using the Suez into the Red Sea, into the Indian Ocean, going to India and China. So now, with that business gone, and with the Suez, the most important sports in the world at the moment are in the Horn of Africa, Sokotra, Yemen, and Somalia. So those places, I'll argue that we are most unlikely to see peace and political stability because of this political geographical case.
Tembisa Ibrahim Fukude, researcher for the Al Jazeera Center of Studies. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Shukran.